Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a really critical moment in the ministry of Jesus, what's known as the Great Confession in Matthew chapter 16. This chapter is just packed with everything: conflict, a bit of confusion, and then a declaration that literally changed the world forever.
So let me start by asking you something. What is the most important question you will ever answer? Think about it. In a world that is just full of noise and a million different opinions, Jesus once asked his followers a question that did way more than just cut through the chatter. It defined his entire movement. And you know what? It still resonates with this profound weight today.
All right, so the story in Matthew 16 kicks off not with some honest curiosity, but right in the middle of a conflict. Jesus gets approached by these two really powerful groups of religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, you got to understand, these guys were normally bitter rivals. The Pharisees were all about strict tradition and the law, while the Sadducees were the wealthy priestly class who rejected a lot of that stuff. But they found one thing they could agree on: their opposition to Jesus. And the reason they asked their question is absolutely key. Matthew 16, verse 1, says they came testing him. This wasn't some genuine search for truth. No way. This was a trap. They were demanding a miracle on their terms, hoping they could discredit him when he refused.
But Jesus' response, it's just brilliant. He points out something they do every single day. They can look at the sky and predict the weather. A red sky at night means good weather tomorrow, right? And he just lays out this incredible irony. You guys can interpret all the signs in the physical heavens, but you are completely blind to the spiritual signs, the prophecies being fulfilled, the lives being changed, that are standing right in front of you in the flesh.
So Jesus isn't about to perform some magic trick on demand. Instead, he offers them one single definitive sign, the sign of Jonah. And this pointed directly to his own coming death and resurrection. Just like Jonah was in the belly of that great fish for 3 days and 3 nights, Jesus was telling them he would be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights before rising again. That, he says, will be the ultimate sign. So after this big confrontation, Jesus turns to his own disciples, and we see that even the people closest to him were really struggling to grasp the spiritual nature of what he was talking about. Jesus gives them this cryptic warning. Now, back then, everybody knew what leaven or yeast did. You just need a tiny amount, and it spreads through and changes the entire batch of dough. It was the perfect metaphor for a pervasive influence. But the disciples, well, they completely missed the point. Their immediate reaction: oh no, he must be mad at us because we forgot to pack lunch. Seriously. They were still thinking in these purely physical, literal terms. So Jesus has to gently redirect them, reminding them, hey guys, remember those times I fed thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread? A lack of physical bread is clearly not the issue here. So here's the crucial point. The leaven wasn't about bread at all. It was the false, hypocritical, and spiritually damaging doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Jesus was warning his followers that these bad ideas, if you let them in, could corrupt their entire faith from the inside out. And that's a timeless warning, isn't it? It's a reminder to always be discerning about the teachings we listen to, because just a little bit of falsehood can spread and spoil everything. And then the scene shifts dramatically. Jesus intentionally takes his disciples about 25 miles north, way away from the familiar crowds of Galilee, to this place called Caesarea Philippi. This was a city just steeped in pagan worship, famous for this big grotto dedicated to the god Pan. And it's against this backdrop of false gods and competing worldviews that Jesus decides to ask the most important question of his entire ministry. He starts by asking a general question: who do people say that I am? And the answers are all over the place. The buzz in the crowd is that he's a great man, maybe a prophet come back from the dead, like John the Baptist or the powerful Elijah, or maybe even the suffering Jeremiah. They respected him for sure, but they didn't truly get it. And then Jesus makes it personal. He looks right at his inner circle, and by extension, he's looking at every single person who would ever claim to follow him, and he asks, but who do you say that I am? And that question changes everything. This isn't about public opinion anymore. It's about personal conviction. And what happens next? Man, it is the climax of the entire chapter. It's this moment of divine revelation that becomes the very bedrock for everything that is to come. And it's Simon Peter. You know, the one who's often impulsive, always putting his foot in his mouth, but not this time. He steps up for the group and he just nails it. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. This is it, the Great Confession. It's the first time in Matthew's entire account that a disciple clearly states that Jesus isn't just a great prophet, but he's the long-awaited Messiah, the divine Son of God. Jesus immediately affirms Peter's declaration, but he makes this super important clarification. He tells him, Peter, this understanding, it didn't come from your own human intellect or from figuring it out on your own. This was a direct revelation from God the Father. This truth had to be divinely revealed. And in response to Peter's confession of that truth, Jesus makes one of the most significant promises in the entire Bible. He declares that on the rock of this revealed truth about who he is, he will build his church, an assembly of followers that not even death itself, the very gates of Hades, could ever overcome. Now, you'd think this incredible high point of revelation would be the end of the chapter, right? But just when you think you've reached the peak, boom, a shocking twist comes next. Just as the disciples are starting to celebrate this messianic identity, Jesus completely flips their expectations of what that even means. From that moment on, Jesus starts to teach them plainly that being the Messiah didn't mean an immediate political victory. No, it meant he had to go to Jerusalem to suffer, to be rejected by the very same religious leaders they had just encountered, to be killed, and then to be raised on the third day. You see, there was this huge disconnect happening here, a clash of kingdoms, really. Peter, like most people at the time, was expecting a conquering king who would overthrow Rome and restore Israel's national glory. But God's plan, it involved a suffering servant, a Messiah who would conquer sin and death through his own sacrifice. And this fundamental misunderstanding leads Peter to make a huge mistake. Peter actually takes Jesus aside and rebukes him, saying, "Never, Lord, this will never happen to you." And Jesus' response is just stunningly harsh. He turns to Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan." Not because Peter was suddenly evil, but because his well-intentioned, human-centered advice was echoing the exact same temptation to avoid the cross, to take the easy way out. He was being a stumbling block to God's divine plan. This incredibly dramatic exchange leads directly to the practical takeaway of the whole chapter. If Jesus is a suffering Messiah who is headed to a cross, then what in the world does that mean for anyone who wants to follow him? The call is crystal clear, and it's challenging. Following Jesus isn't about gaining worldly power or finding comfort. It's about a radical reorientation of your entire life. This isn't just some ancient idea. It's a direct challenge to our modern pursuit of self-fulfillment and easy living. It is a call to deny yourself, take up your own cross, and follow in his footsteps. So let's break that down into its three parts. First, deny yourself. That means turning away from your own self-centered agenda and putting God first. Second, take up your cross. That means willingly embracing the path of sacrifice and difficulty that comes with following him, just like a condemned man would literally carry his own instrument of execution. And third, follow me. That just means making his life the pattern for your own. That right there is the essence of true discipleship. And all of this brings us to the final, piercing question Jesus leaves for his disciples and for us. After revealing who he is and the true cost of following him, he forces us to weigh the value of everything this world has to offer against the infinite worth of our own soul. He asks, for what can a man give in exchange for his soul? It's the ultimate bottom line, a question that demands an answer from every single one of us.